Yeah, this morning we're going to talk a little bit about measuring and marking. Measuring and marking is really important to us because when we're doing our layout, we need to be as accurate and precise as we can. And we are really shooting for perfect layout. And we'll talk today a little bit about the tools that are necessary to achieve that perfect layout. Yeah, here's the tools that we're going to need for today's exercise. We need a framing square, a pencil. So I've got a carpenter pencil here, which is standard carpenter pencil, and I think it's a Pica carpenter's pencil. I kind of like that brand. Box cutter, a combo square, and a tape measure or two. I have two tape measures here, and I'll show you the difference between those two as we get into it. So the first thing we're going to do is take a look at our pencil. This is a standard carpenter's pencil. We're going to sharpen it with a box knife. And what we're shooting for is very flat up here with the lead extending here, and you want it sharp like a knife. And the reason you want that is when you're going to make your marking, we're going to put it right next to our reference, and we're going to use a light touch and run our mark across. Now this mark right here, because my pencil was very thin, will be right next to the mark. As I kind of work through this, if I have a thick rounded pencil, then that mark is going to start shifting away from my square, and that is going to throw off my measurements, and they can throw them off by as much as a 1/16 or an 1/8 of an inch over the course of a timber. This is another pencil here. This brand is a Pica pencil. If you're interested, you can get it from our Amazon store. It's got a sharpener built right in, and I kind of like this pencil. Get you a nice sharp point, and it's the same thing. You're going to put the pencil right here. We're going to use a light touch. We're going to cant it out a little bit so the point is right next to the edge, and we're going to make our line. And as we make that line, that's going to be an accurate and precise line. If you take a look, the Pica pencil line is a little bit thicker than the pencil line that was made with our carpenter pencil. And the third methodology, and we'll use this a lot in timber framing, is we make a lot of marks with a marking knife or a box knife. This is going to be the most accurate and the most precise. So we'll put it right next to our layout tool. We'll cant it out just a little bit, and we'll just pull that mark. And we're just going to use a light touch. We're not going to push real hard, have to go over it maybe a couple of times. And now you can see this mark right here is right on, and that's going to be the most accurate and precise. What I'll do often is fill this mark in with pencil so that when it's time to do the work, I can actually see where the mark is. When we do our layout, we're going to do layout in pencil first. If we have any issues, we'll erase and redo the layout. Then we'll use the marking knife. The marking knife marks our layout, but it also breaks the grain and gives us a finished edge. So if I wanted to mark this line here, put my marking knife right in the line. I'm going to butt my layout tool right up to my marking knife, and then I will just a few light strokes. And now this line is right there on the line. Here you can see our marks, and you can see the precision associated with it. The Pica is okay. The pencil is better. And then the marking knife, the box cutter, is actually the very best. If you look there, you can see that that is a very accurate and precise marking. And it is going to be right where your layout square happens to be. So we'll talk just a minute or two about tape measures. All tape measures are not created equal. When you buy a tape measure from the store, the box store, the printing on the tape measures could vary a little bit. And you'll see tape measures vary from tape to tape. We use a lot of tapes in our classes, and I would say out of 30 or 40 tapes, we find one or two that's misprinted. If you're working by yourself and you're using a single tape, it really doesn't make any difference. But when you are working with a number of people and you have a number of different tapes, if they aren't right on, then that you can interject an error and things may not go together properly. So normally what we do when we first get rolling is we check all of our tape measures and just make sure that they read correctly. To check a tape measure, you just set them side by side, like numbers next to each other, and make sure they line up. If they don't line up, don't use that tape measure. Remove that from service for this particular project. There are a few different styles of tape measures. This one's a standard tape that you see. You can buy really from the box stores. You can get it from our Amazon storefront if you want. But it has a curve to it. It has a hook on the end. And that's probably the one that is most common. This is another tape. This is specialized timber framing tape, but it lays flat. And so that makes it kind of nice for layout. A lot of folks will like a flat tape. I like both. I like the regular tape and a flat tape because a regular tape you can move like this, right? A flat tape, you try and extend it and measure something. Well, it's really not going to measure anything. So for this, we're going to utilize our standard tape. And now the tape measures right on the end here. This moves back and forth. And in theory, what it does is it moves back and forth the thickness of this particular piece. What that allows you to do is you can hook on a timber. You can hook on a timber and get a measurement, or you can push on your timber and get a measurement. And the pushing and the pulling is supposedly going to equalize out based on that movement. Well, it's not real accurate, not real precise, and this can get worn with time. So for timber framing, we don't use the end. We're going to burn a measurement. If I'm measuring in inches, I will burn 10 inches. If I'm measuring in feet, I will burn 1 foot. What that means is if I want a measurement that's 10 inches long, I'm going to start at the 10, and that'll be my 0, and then I'm going to go to my 20. And so I'll go from 10 to 20, and that gives me my 10-inch measurement, and it takes this takes this bit out of the equation. Some people will do 1 inch or 2 inches or 3 inches. I find it's just easier to subtract 10. So if I got 37 inches, then I'm looking, starting at the 10, I'm going to 47 inches. And it just makes it very, very straightforward. If my plan's in feet, I will burn a foot. So if I needed a measurement that was 1 foot 2 inches, I'd put my 1 foot on my 0 mark. I would go to 2 foot 2 inches, and that's going to be my measurement. And I find that when I'm measuring in feet, it's a lot easier to burn a foot. So burn 10 inches when your plan's in inches, burn a foot when your plan's in feet. Now when we mark our measurements, we're going to use a crow's foot. And the reason for a crow's foot, if I just make a mark like this, well, I don't know if it's this part or this part, and it can get kind of out of whack. So to actually make a crow's foot marking, I'm going to look, in this case, I'm going to look straight down at the 10. I'm going to put this pencil right on the 10. I'm going to make a mark that way, go right back to my point, and make a mark the other way. And what that does then is I know that this point is the mark that I care about. So we just want to get in the habit of utilizing a crow's foot when we make our markings, and that will allow us to be a lot more accurate and precise. A lot of times, if the timber is, kind of old and crusty, I will circle the crow's foot so that when I come back to it, I can find it. So here's our crow's foot marking. And so I got to my measurement, looked straight down, and I identified this point. Made a line this way, went right back to the point, made a line that way. And then it's crystal clear that that is the point that I care about for my measurement. And then the crow's foot is very helpful when I want to line up my measurement. I can go ahead and see right where that point is supposed to be. If I want to, I can put my pencil right in my crow's foot. I can line this right up to my pencil, make sure that everything's nice and square, and then I'm going to make my line, and it's going to go right through the center of the crow's foot. When you buy a new square, check and make sure it's actually square. What we use is the 3, 4, 5 method. That's the Pythagorean theorem. And so basically 3 squared plus 4 squared equals 5 squared. So we're kind of looking to make sure that we'll go 3, 4, 5. To make it a little easier, we're going to go 6, 8, 10. So if I take my tape, and again, I'm going to put my 10 inches right on the 6, and then I'm going to go right to the 8, and I'm measuring on the same side of the tape. And I want to validate that when I go to the 8 and I'm on the 6, the tape reads 20, which is 10. And that tells me that my square is in fact square. Sometimes you'll find a square in the box store. You may find a few of them that are out of square a little bit, and you certainly don't want to use those. An alternate method of checking square is just to make sure you're you have a somewhat of a square edge to start with, and you can make a line. You'll line up your square with the outer edge here, and you're just going to make a line. And then you can reverse your square, and what you're going to do is you're going to make sure that it does in fact line up with that line. And if it doesn't line up, then your square might be a little bit out of square. Inside the box store, it's a little easier to check it with a tape measure. When you're doing your work, if you drop it or bang it or something like that, and you want to double check it, this quick little line check works great. So a framing square actually has this dimension right here is 1.5 inches. And this dimension right here is 2 inches. When we get into standard size tenons, you're going to see that those are very useful measurements. In smaller timbers, 6-inch timbers, our tenons are 1.5 inches off the reference face and 1.5 inches thick, which aligns with this measurement here. For 8 or 10 inches, we'll put our mortises and tenons 2 inches off the reference face and 2 inches thick, which aligns with this dimension here. So it makes it very convenient. For the project we're going to do, we're going to use 1-inch tenons, 1 inch off the reference face, and the combo square actually has a 1-inch measurement here, and we're going to utilize that rather than measuring points and drawing lines or connecting the dots. Kind of the benefit to this is if I line up to my edge, and this is 2 inches, and I make a line here, well, this line is now 2 inches off that face. If I line up my square again and drop my pencil, I have to pick that back up. If I line up to the line that I have there, and I make another line, now I'm 2 inches off that face and 2 inches off this particular face, and that's kind of where our square rule comes, is 2-inch housing plus a 2-inch tenon. And when I'm looking at a perpendicular line, I can line up with my edge right here, and I can make a line like that, and I can make a second line like that. So now this line and that line is perpendicular to this edge. This dimension is 2 inches, and this is another 2 inches. So it's 2 and 4. And it's a relatively quick way for laying out our mortises. And when we get into mortise layout, we'll show you exactly how to do that. But it's a very easy way of doing that layout. Is this speed square, and I didn't introduce that earlier, but it has these little notches here at 2, so I could put my pencil right on the 2. I can move that along. That gives me a line at 2. Now, unfortunately, I don't have a notch at 4. Some squares have those notches that go all the way up. But I can put my pencil right on the 4 mark and move it along. So now I got a line at 2 and a line at 4, and the speed square will let me square up to that edge, and now this line and that line is perpendicular here. This is 2, this is 4. I find that using a pencil like that just next to the guide, for me, I'm not as accurate as I would like to be, so I generally don't utilize that method. I work with a carpenter that is crazy good with a tape measure and a pencil, and he can mark just about anything super fast just using the tape measure that he's carrying around with him all the time. Okay, so for the exercise, you just need a scrap piece of 2x4, and what we're going to do is lay out a series of lines on the timber, and it just gives you practice burning 10 inches on your tape measure, using the crow's foot, and then making both a parallel and perpendicular line. And it may not be perfect at first, that's fine. You want to use a light touch, a sharp pencil, and just kind of repeat this until you feel comfortable with it and you think that your measurements are accurate and precise. So we're going to lay this out, and we're going to have this 10 inches. So to be 10 inches, I'm going to burn 10 inches. So I'm going to look straight down at my 10, 1/2 of my crow's foot, 2nd half of my crow's foot. I need 10 inches, so I'm going to go to my 20-inch mark, and I'm going to make 1/2, 2nd half. So now I have 10 inches between those two marks. I didn't rely on the end of the tape, so I know that that is accurate and precise. And I want to measure right from my points. So to get a line on there that is perpendicular, I'll line my square up to this outside edge. I'm going to line it right up with that point. I'm going to make sure that when I put my pencil there, it's right on the point. I'm lined up with the outside edge, and by lining up with the outside edge, that gives me a nice and perpendicular line. And I'll do the same thing here. I'm going to line my square up to that outside edge, and it's going to give me a nice line. So that goes all the way across, and that's a perpendicular line. If I wanted a parallel line that was 1.5 inches, because this is 1.5 inches, I'm going to line this framing square up here at the 1.5 inch level, and I can make a line here. I want to hang on to it. The square tends to kind of move a little bit, and now that line is perpendicular to these two lines, and it's 1.5 inches off of this face, or off of this edge. If I want a line that's another 1.5 inches, I will line it up with my line, and then I'm going to make another line. And if you think about it, this is kind of the process that we're going to use for laying out a mortise. We'll have a housing and a mortise, but we got to get good at perpendicular lines and parallel lines. These lines are kind of heavy because I want you to be able to see those for this exercise, or for this video. But when you're doing the exercise, I would suggest you practice really light touch. Okay, you see that line there? Very, very thin line, and that's going to give you a lot more accuracy and a lot more precision. And then the other thing we want to practice is we want to practice breaking the grain with a box knife. We use marking knives in the shop, but a box knife works just fine. And it's breaking the grain, so you want to practice so that you get kind of proficient with it. I find that I'll line up my square generally with the line. I'm going to put my box knife right in the line, and then I'm going to slide my square up so that it's actually touching my box knife. And then I can pick it up. I'm just going to make light strokes. 1, 2, 3. And what that just did is that put a nice little knife line here, and if I want it deeper, I can make it a little bit deeper afterwards. What I want to be cautious of is when I get to this spot right here, I want to just push that down. I don't want to be flicking my knife like that, because you could end up putting it in your thigh, big vein in your thigh. You don't want to do that. You can actually use your square either way, whichever way is more comfortable to you. So here I'm going to put my box knife in this line. I'm going to slide it up. Once I'm in contact, I'm going to make sure it lines up very well with the edge of my timber. And just a few light strokes. 1, 2, 3, 4. And that gives me a nice crisp line. And this is actually going to be the finished edge of some of the joinery that we do a little later on. We also want to practice the parallel lines. So I'm going to line up with my line, and this gets a little bit, you want to make sure that you're holding it well, and you want to really watch where your knife is going. A lot of times it'll want to catch in the grain, and then it starts to wander. It starts to wander off your line. So you have to hold the square tight, and then you have to validate that it's going where you want it to go, right down that grain. Because a lot of times you'll catch the grain and it'll just kind of pull you away from whatever your reference is. So you want to do it very carefully. And you want to practice perpendicular lines, parallel lines. You want to be very good with a light touch with your pencil. And then you want to go through and mark them. When we do our layout, we're going to utilize pencil. And then once we've done the checking and the correcting that we need to do, then we'll come back and mark it. And you know you get this right by double checking. So if you laid out our 10-inch line, go ahead and lay it out, do your knife marks, and then burn 10 inches on your tape measure and double check. Make sure it's right on 10 inches. And if it's not perfect on 10 inches, try it again. Try it again until you get it perfect, because that's going to make layout a lot more effective for us as we move along. Yeah, once you're comfortable with the layout, you feel like your marks are accurate and precise, and you can follow with your marking knife, both perpendicular and parallel. Move on to the next lesson, and we'll talk about cutting timbers using the Ryobi pole saw.